this global skepticism that you doubt the foundations of every claim that could possibly exist. It doesn't necessarily correlate to certain things. It correlates to all things. So, as I said before, presupposition is the skepticism. So when you make a claim, it's a layer. Okay, every layer then can be used to support another claim, which is above that layer, right? So, say you have Super Saiyan is a 50 times multiplier. Okay, whatever, just for Dragon Ball's sake. It's stated in the guidebooks and such. First of all, you'd be asserting that the guidebook is correct, right? You'd then be asserting that 50 means the same thing for you as it does me, and then you'd be assuming that a 50 times multiplier is what it is for you as it is for me. Okay, there's like 3 levels to this assertion. Now, that's obviously a very basic one, but then you could also say, okay, well, you're also assuming that the guidebook has any validity in this story. You're asserting the story has at all uses numbers the same way we do. You can make all these weird skepticisms that you want. It doesn't matter. However, these are all just levels of axioms where we just assume or things are accepted as true. So we assume that gravity in a series is the same, even though we could like say, oh, well, what if gravity is different, right? A good example of this is you say, take a pen. Okay, you have a pen in a series, and this pen just writes what appears to be normal ink on a paper, just whatever a normal pen looks like when it writes. And then someone says to you, well, I don't think that's a normal pen. It's fictional, so I don't think it's normal. And then you would just say something along the lines of, well, why is this pen different than a normal pen? Like, why wouldn't we just assume that just ink coming onto paper? And they could say something like, well, you're asserting that a magical demonic black dragon didn't swoop into their realm, and with its ejaculate, it can create this pitch black substance that is superior to ink, that all of the inhabitants of this world decided to use this demon dragon's ejaculate over normal ink that we use in real life. So you are assuming your axiom above this fact. So your axiom is based on this fuzzy foundation that is questionable. Another example is Harry Potter versus like fairy tale magic. Is the magic the same? Like, is it different? Like, what is magic? Are you just asserting that magic can be the same between verses if you're comparing them? How should that all work, right? There's obviously these clear assumptions being made in everything. Now I think I should talk about the breakdown in all analysis if we don't presuppose anything, because presupposition does go both ways, right? So like, for instance, I had the debate with King of Lightning where he's like, okay, well, we shouldn't accept a statement unless, we shouldn't accept a scaling unless it's specifically stated. Now, I did in that debate prove the Dragon Ball universe is just based on our own, it was stated, so by his logic, I did prove it. But then he was saying things like, we shouldn't say they're the speed of light unless they're stated to be the speed of light. But then I would just say, why is the speed of light that they're being stated as the same speed of light in our universe, right? I believe a lot of those guys are from One Piece debating. So like, for instance, if you were to have like a One Piece character be like, well, I'm the speed of light, and they're like, oh, he's the speed of light. Well, then you would just say, well, you're assuming that they're the speed of light. You're assuming that they're the in real life speed of light, right? You're assuming all things. So this comes down to a pragmatic burden of proof. And this is just a basic way that we have a discussion. And presuppositions are important if you're going to scale, just like presuppositions are important if you're going to have a normal conversation, okay? So when you have a normal conversation, you assume every word being spoken to you means the same thing that you think it does, okay? So when you say something like me talking to you right now, I'm assuming that you understand language that I speak, okay? I'm assuming that all of the words that I say mean the same thing for me that they do for you. So in this case, we would have if you were to say it doesn't, you would have a pragmatic burden of proof where you are under like this burden to prove that it means something different, because the basic assumption is that these things mean what we think they do, right? So when you have a universe, like a fictional universe, it has like similar names, blah, blah, blah. you would assert that it should just be a fictional representation of our reality that has similar concepts, and if they are different, you should assert why they are different, right? You should prove that they are different, because that is your burden of proof, right? You can't just say you are assuming they are the same. You have to prove that they are different, because that is just simply how the pragmatics of burden of proof works to even have normal conversations, let alone scaling these weird fictional verses. Another example of presupposition is like, you know, you're presupposing that reality is all that you think it is, right? Like you're assuming that everything in reality is as you see it. You could put a stick into water and the stick will look bent. You can see railroads in the distance look like they're about to slap into each other when they're really not. You see boats floating over water on the horizon when they're really not. You see all kinds of illusions in life that can sort of question your senses seeing reality as you think it does. However, you just assume that everything is as you see it or as we can explain it, rather than assuming you're a brain in a vat. Even though that could be an explanation, it is up to a claimant to kind of prove or assert why that would be the case. Not necessarily up to you, since you are having a neutral position. So, I think in closing, if you are analyzing narrative or fiction in general, these things should come down to, it's a fiction usually based off of our reality unless it's stated otherwise, and then all of those differences should be categorized and explained in detail rather than assumed that everything is just an assumption and not based off of real life. And I think that is just a basic burden of proof on anybody that debates the topic. I think everything should be assumed on a base level, because obviously, like I said before, presupposition goes both ways, right? It destroys both sides of an argument. It's not just a one-way street. So, other than that, just wanted to give my thoughts on that. Not scripted. Hope you guys enjoyed that, and I'll see you on another one.
All right, you can go ahead. You can go ahead, God. Tell me, I'll let you start, Big Daddy.
Give me 1 second. Okay, is my mic working fine? My headphone jack is basically exploded. I have to tape it in there now. Okay, so basically, my main argument for Xehanort beating Ainz, big fucking shocker, is that he is going to possess him. To accomplish this, Xehanort has a few things. For one, he has Xigbar, who is not only able to teleport himself and others, and to teleport others he doesn't have to be touching them. Xigbar is actually able to make portals that he can send his own or others' attacks through. In addition to that, there is There is a Heartless called the Great Capris, and Xehanort has pretty much complete control over the Heartless, which he is able to use those to essentially swap their position with that of the opponent to essentially keep his opponent anywhere he wants them throughout the fight. Xehanort has the most powerful time magic in the series, more powerful than Mickey, who is able to stop a pretty large area. And even if Ainz is immune or resistant to time stop or whatever, we know that his magic won't actually activate until the time stop wears off. And given the fact that, Xehanort has a lot of ways to essentially end fights really quickly, the main one being his possession, young Xehanort, who is the main one that likes to just spam time manipulation throughout fights. In the boss battle with him, he does crap like rewind time on himself to heal his injuries or completely reset the fight if you're about to win. So essentially, young Xehanort would stop time, preventing, even if, Ainz wouldn't be stopped by it, it prevents his spells from working. That means that Xehanort can do his whole put his heart in you shtick with Xigbar to not only teleport the heart if need be, he's capable of, you know, teleporting Ainz to wherever Xehanort wants him, and the Great Capris is capable of doing the same thing should Xigbar somehow be impeded.
Okay, so my first question is going to be, is Xigbar's ability like an ability or is it magic?
How do you define magic?
What do you mean, how do I define magic? Is it called magic in the verse?
It's just an ability he has.
Like, for example, like, I know within Kingdom Hearts there are things like mana does this attack take mana when it's used. Like, I know you can play Xigbar in 362.5 days. When you're playing as Xigbar and you use his ability, does it take mana?
It's teleportation, and I don't believe does. I think it functions as like his normal dodge ability.
Okay, and then on top of that, Ainz actually does have a way of being completely immune to this ability of magic. Specifically, he has a ring that protects him from behavior disturbance and another ring that protects him from all temporal attacks and attacks designed to make it so he can't move as he wishes. Now I'll get you those two rings right here. The first thing this means is not only will Ainz be able to move freely of his own volition at all times, which I believe will negate Xigbar's ability to forcibly make him move, but it will also make it so the time stop that he attempts to use will be completely and utterly stopped, or make it so where he's completely immune to it. And Ainz himself states that Ainz himself states that by level 80, you should have all sorts of equipment that stops you or that keeps you from getting time manipulated, because time manipulation on such a scale is very prevalent within Yggdrasil. So the two initial claims that you had are already negated by two of Ainz's rings without going into his great deal of immunities and his ability to stop things. Next thing that I'd like to go over, as far as possession, how far does it travel, and is it actually faster than what's his name? Than Xehanort himself? Like is this possession instant, or like what's the deal?
Okay, so for one, going back to the teleportation thing, it doesn't seem like the ring would actually stop him from being teleported. It would stop him from, being immobilized by time stop, but that doesn't matter too much. Teleportation, by its nature, isn't really movement, nor does it really impede his freedom of movement.
Then what would you define it as if it's not movement?
It's teleportation.
Right, but you said it's not really movement, so I'm asking
teleportation, you aren't moving from one place to another, you just appear there. There is no transition where you're actually moving.
Okay.
And in addition, what was your question there at the end?
I asked you how fast is the possession? Is the possession instant, or does it take time? Does you have to travel, etc.?
It's fast enough. If I can find it real quick. It's fast enough to possess Terra to the point where he couldn't react to it, despite the fact that not only is he able to keep up with Xehanort in their fight, he actually overpowers him.
And can you show me that?
Yeah.
And in with a younger, stronger new one.
What did you put a timestamp in here? Like what point do I go to?
Say again?
What point do I go to? When does it happen?
It's already there.
No, I'm saying what point? Is it the first thing that happens?
No, in the video that I linked, the link was set so that it would start. It should be starting at 5 minutes and something.
It's definitely starting at the beginning, but I'll just go to 5 minutes. Watch.
Yeah, at about 5:25.
I would survive.
Okay, so I have a few problems with this. The initial one being that you claim that he was not able to react to it. Not only does, for whatever reason, he stands there and watches him do this whole speech as it happens. This attack is not something that is instantly going out. On top of that, he actually does react at the... Let me see what mark this is. So he sees it coming at 528, and he's even able to move his arm to try and block whatever he thinks it is before it hits him. So to say that he's incapable of reacting to it is not true. As we see, not only does he stand there like an idiot and watch it, he actually does attempt to block it, but it does go into him, meaning that he is capable of reacting, and someone relative to Xehanort would be able to react to the attack, which in an equal stats fight between Xehanort and I can easily argue that Ainz would be able to react to it. And not only that, Ainz is not the kind of person to try and block and like avoid things. He's the type to move out of the way, either through teleportation, time stop, a lot of variables, or shields in general to get away from the attack rather than try and block it with his physical body. Do you have anything else that you want to add on? Do you have any what's the word, clips to supplement your argument that he wasn't able to react to it? Or
basically
it's
the fact that we actually know Kingdom Hearts characters like Terra, as a Keyblade wielder, knows what a heart is and looks like. Only being able to move his arm slightly is not a sufficient reaction because we know
it's not. It's not slightly. It goes from by his waist to across his body.
That is a very slight reaction. Yes.
Okay, then
that is literally the equivalent.
Reaction?
That's the equivalent of like twitching when you see something, trying to like do a stance and still getting decked in the face.
It's not the equivalent of twitching. He's moving part of his body and he goes into a blocking position. He believes he blocked it. He goes from having his hand by his waist to across his shoulder before the attack hits him, before it's able to cross the distance.
And he is moving a much shorter distance than the attack did and was still unable to block it with his Keyblade, which actually would have been able to stop it.
Right, but the thing is, he didn't know that. Clearly he didn't know that because he's able to move his Keyblade from his waist to his shoulder. It's simply him putting his Keyblade in the wrong position, or it's being, for whatever stupid reason, he tries to block it with his bare arm. He had enough time to lift his Keyblade to the point where he could have blocked it. And that's a fact. And if you say otherwise, then you're simply ignoring the fact that he was able to get his hand from his waist to his shoulder, which is not a small distance. Especially if you're saying that the attack speed blitzed him. On top of that, Ainz has who's that? Is that you, Gaton?
Say what?
Is that you playing the audio?
No.
But on top of that, Ainz has multiple spells that he can cast at a thought that will allow him to instantly move out of the way of the attack, or he can cast multiple shields, etc., etc. Has this ability been shown to move through, like, permeate shields or anything? Like, can it pierce a shield?
He wouldn't be able to make shields because, as it states in Overlord, when time is stopped, the effects of the spells don't activate until the time stop wears off.
I can actually get that for you because I don't believe that's for all time stops. I simply think that's for his time stops.
What makes his time stop different from just stopping time?
Because it's a game mechanic, right? If you're able to stop time and instantly cast a spell yourself, then that'd be overpowered. But if it's someone else's time stop, it wouldn't make any sense for him not to be able to cast spells during it. But I'll go ahead and get the scan to see.
Yeah, but it's even
I'll just check.
Yeah, like with the statement, it's like, as such, only about 5% of all magic users can pull it off. That implies that it's like a widespread general thing that when time stop happens, it's very difficult. Like, some of them can like time the activation of their spells, so they activate once the time stop wears off. Even like the statement about it doesn't imply that it's specific to Ainz. It's just a rare ability to be able to synchronize the activation of your spell with the end of a time stop very well.
Right. So here's the statement that you're talking about. Right. No attacks would work while time was stopped. Even if he used attack magic to barrage Gazef, it would cause him no harm. Right. Because of that, Ainz cast a spell while keeping track of time. So the first thing that we have to talk about is that not only do I believe that your logic is flawed, saying that simply because Xehanort himself stops time, that would make Ainz incapable of casting magic. I think that's an insane thing to think of, because under what circumstance would him stopping time not allow him to make attacks. But we can move on from that. Ainz is still able to cast spells when time is stopped. He's simply not able to attack. As we see, it directly states in the very next scan after that, he does cast a spell, that being Delay Magic, True Death. So even if we were to assume that if it was only because of the fact, or only because time is stopped, that he can't attack, even if anyone stops time, which I still believe is not something that you can support at all with any evidence to claim that. I think I've provided enough evidence to prove that it's only when he himself stops time. Because if the game mechanic was, you can stop time and no one's able to cast spells, then no fights would go anywhere after a certain point in time if everyone just kept time stopped and had their rings on. That would just be a very broken game mechanic, and Yggdrasil was supposedly a very balanced game. But then even if you want to take that route and grandstand that point with no evidence, Ainz still is capable of casting spells so long as they're not offensive, as we see when he does indeed cast a Delay Magic in the very same time stop. So he would be able to get out of the way of the attack through the use of greater teleportation or even gate. He has a multitude of teleportation spells that are described as being instant. So I don't believe that possession would work, and I don't believe that even if Yggdrasil was constantly teleporting him around, I think Ainz would be able to take care of Yggdrasil pretty easily with a quick instant death spell or something similar, and then focus his attention on Xehanort. And Xehanort, I don't believe, has any way of tagging Ainz with his possession, even if he were to time stop, because of Ainz's multitude of instant teleportation spells that function at the speed of thought.
Alright, so about Xigbar, killing him wouldn't be easy due to the nature of nobodies. Nobodies in Kingdom Hearts, they lack souls as well as like a life force. They aren't really alive. They are actually considered to not even really exist. So it's very unlikely that instant death, at least as like non-powered up ones, would work on a being that already isn't alive in any normal sense. And there's the fact it's not like he'll just be able to focus his attention on Xigbar during the fight. Xigbar is a sniper, he's a long-range fighter. Mm-hmm. And Xehanort, even if, say, Master Xehanort were to be just maneuvering his heart trying to possess Ainz throughout the fight, there's still young Xehanort, there is Ansem with his shadow, there is Luxord, who is actually capable of transmuting the opponent and turning them into like cards or like dice to immobilize them. And Xehanort through Vanitas has access to the Unversed, which are basically an endlessly respawning army that whenever they're defeated just flow back into Xehanort or Vanitas, who is Xehanort because Kingdom Hearts, and they can just instantly be reformed.
Okay, so then my argument against that. The first thing, when Ainz is facing an army, as you stated he would be, he has a spell that he uses that has a massive AoE and was able to instantly kill over 70,000 soldiers, that being La Shub-Niggurath. La Shub-Niggurath is stated to directly sacrifice anyone who's caught within the range of the spell to the Lovecraftian outer god Shub-Niggurath. And I'll get you that right now. And not only that, but through the use of this ability, he not only gains access to the Darkion, which are level 90 monsters, and level 80 monsters are easily able to, the beings below level 100 or around level 100, level 90 are able to destroy infinite constructs, being 4D. So the moment he activates the Darkion, if you have an unlimited infinite source of enemies, what you're basically doing is giving Ainz a great deal of a Darkion that are able to contend against this army of his, and will keep them off. And I'll get you that right now. And not only that, but his super tier magic can be cast instantly through the use of the Hourglass cast up item.
And how many of those can he carry at once?
He can carry an unlimited amount, like its own pocket dimension, I believe. But I'll have to check. So this is the Darkion that I'm gonna post right now. And unless any of them can resist the can resist the attack of that boy Shub Nigrath, I don't think they're going to be able to resist the Dark Young this Dark Young sacrifice.
Are you posting in CSDC or?
Yeah, I was copying it. I might have I reached the text limit, so I'm gonna have to post in parts. That's the first part. That's the first part. Resend. Still too long, sorry. Oh, never mind. The first part posted. So yeah, 70,000 after the Storm of Death is where it stops.
So Lashib Nigarath, is it just like, is it an area of effect, or is it just like an area of effect attack, or is it a death spell?
It's an area of effect attack that is also death spell instantly. What it does is it instantly kills anyone within the area, and then immediately sacrifices any of those within that range to Shub Nigrath. And I'll also get you scans of Ainz killing a homunculus that was beyond the concepts of life and death in the audio files. Once I find it, 1 second. So even things like Heartless and Nobodies, which really have no concept of life, would still be capable of being killed by Ainz, as we see him doing the same thing to a homunculus, that being Ain Hajar.
I'm pretty sure right there when it says with no concept of life, that's because a homunculus isn't really alive. It's kind of like how a robot isn't really considered alive. I don't think that's saying Shaltir like transcends the concept of death.
I'm not saying Shaltir itself transcends the concept of death. The only one who concept of death is states to be Ainz himself through the Overlord class. But what I'm not saying Shaltir herself transcends the concept of death. Rather, he's able to kill things that have no concept of being alive or even alive inherently, right? He's killed air molecules. He's killed the earth itself. He's killed like things that should have no concept or are alive or dead, right? And your argument was because the Heartless and Nobodies are not alive in that sense that he wouldn't be able to kill them, and yet he is able to kill these constructs.
Isn't he only able to kill
through the use of goal of all life is death? He's only able to kill these things through the goal of all life is death. Yeah, but so the moment he realizes but like once I said, like right as I said, he doesn't instantly lead with Lashib Nigrath. But the moment that he realizes that his normal instant death spells are not capable of killing, he is going to utilize the goal of all life is death to create an AoE attack that is going to kill instantly. And anyone caught within this AoE attack is going to be killed instantly. So go ahead.
And you see, I still don't agree with your, I guess, disagreement that time stop, wouldn't affect his spellcasting, because like as it says, the statement is literally all blah blah blah. No spell could affect an enemy while time stopped, and all one had to do was delay the activation of the spell until the moment the time stop ended. Although it was a simple combination attack in theory, the trick was getting the timing right and was extremely difficult. As such, only 5% of all magic users can pull it off. That's basically implying that like time stop preventing your spells is just like a common thing that magic users have to deal with, and it's not just specific to Ainz. It doesn't even imply that it only stops there.
Never once did I say it's only specific to Ainz. What I said was,
is that through it's I believe that only applies to when the magic caster himself is casting magic. If
Can
that
you
was
show me anything that says that? Otherwise,
we have
by
literally
the way
no
it's presented, then it would just be all of it.
No one else within that verse is capable of performing time stops, so we have nothing to go off of. However, to say that someone else casting time stop would stop his magic also has no substance to it, has no sustenance to prove such. And even if you were to assume that this stops him from keeping the time or whatever you're saying, he can still teleport away and then activate any of his many other cast up items that would allow him to utilize the abilities of, say, Touch Me, or any of the other guild members who have a vastly different attack or a vastly different way of going about things. And by amping himself, even for equal stats, are amps allowed?
I don't think amps work in equal stats. That kind of defeats the purpose.
Well, anyway, even if you were to say Touch Me, even if you were to say he can't use magic anymore, should he keep can he keep time like stopped infinitely? Can he keep it stopped for as long as he wants?
Yeah, while he's fighting Riku, he basically teleports him to a realm where he just has complete control over time. And he is stated to transcend time, so he basically just has complete control over it. By basically sacrificing his body, he gains the strongest time manipulation in the series.
So let me ask you the question: when they're outside of that, has he shown the ability to stop time?
Basically, it is stated by the, creator of the game that he has more powerful time magic than Mickey, who has the big area of effect stop.
Right, but what you said was he's capable of performing these things in this certain realm, and even
no,
if he
it's just that while fighting, he teleported to that realm. It doesn't.
Can you show me this? Can you show me the scan?
Abilities.
Can you show me the scan then?
It's in CSDC.
Okay, hold on. Is there a timestamp on it?
It's a
picture. Okay.
Or is it author? If it's whatever.
Where?
CSDC.
Is it above? Okay,
it's at the bottom. I just posted it.
And then where does it say that he's able to, as the time, more powerful?
Because he was able to overpower Mickey's time magic because of his own power to control time.
And then you're stating that it's stated that this is magic directly in that statement, right?
Sure. Well,
so then, should he perform?
Well, they never use the word magic. They just say power.
Well, he says, we're the seekers of darkness who are meant to be in the different times gathered by transcending time with magic. And Nomura at no point says it's not through the use of magic.
The question was with magic. He never says it was with magic.
Okay. So then my question was, when you said he teleported Riku into this realm, is that the only time that he performs his magic time stop, whatever?
No, it actually happens before that when Mickey stops time and he negs Mickey's time stop and then just kicks him in the fucking face.
And that's the gif you showed me above the Birth by Sleep video, correct?
Oh no, that would be this one. Where they're in the area where Mickey stopped time and Xehanort countered it with his own time magic and then slapped Mickey. This is immediately following Mickey casting the Stopsa.
Hold on. So then, in this instance, when the young Xehanort stops, why does he stop at all if he isn't completely immune to it?
Because he was
or is that old Xehanort who comes in and slaps him?
It's still young Xehanort. He was basically doing the good old villain thing of fucking around and pretending it worked.
Okay, so once again, how does this prove that he himself can stop time?
Because
can you show me? Right, but
He's
can you still make
stated
him
to have
stop
time
in time?
superior to Nikki. Yeah, I can. Hang on.
Okay, please.
God, I need to get a new. Actually, no, it's not. I said fucking port on this thing. You can go ahead and make other points while I'm looking for this.
No, this seems like the point that's going to be pretty much debate.
Alright. Let's see here. It's in birth by sleep. My hard drive had to explode. So I should mention it. Alright, I cannot find the mysterious figure boss fight where he does it. I'll keep looking. It was really annoying to find stuff in video games.
I get that.
Doom spell. I have to remember what specific video I saw it in. It's definitely against Terra.
Damn, nigga.
Yeah, it is really annoying to find stuff for this fight. I'll just concede that point and we can move on.
Okay. So the next point that I want to, since now that we don't think about him not being a time stop. Once again, I'm going to grandstand the fact that I don't believe that Heinz will ever be hit by possession. And the moment that he realizes that his instant death magic, that being his leading spell being Grasp Heart, and the moment that he realizes that it won't instantly kill or doesn't completely annihilate in the same way that it should, I think the first thing he's going to do is go for his goal of all life is death as a, like, you know, panic button of sorts. And then he's either going to use Cry of the Banshee for the larger AoE, or he's going to use La Shub Niggurath to not only take care of the massive amounts of enemies, which if it's, as you say, an infinite amount, either it's going to create an infinite amount of Dark Young, which is going to be very not good for any of the Xehanorts, because the level 90 characters and above are about relative to them in power. And are the infinite monsters that he creates, are they strong? Like, are they relative to like Keyblade wielders?
The weakest kind were able to neg someone who was equal in strength to their creator.
And how strong is the creator?
Well, in this case, the creator would be Xehanort, since Vanitas is now a part of Xehanort, so he counts as within composite Xehanort.
So they were relative to each other.
The weakest are relative to the creator, and the others, there are ones that are stated to be like massively more powerful than the other unversed. Specifically, the Iron Imprisoner, which is specifically stated to be like extremely superior to them.
To the creator or the other unversed?
To the other unversed, and by extension the creator, since the weaker unversed scale to him.
Okay, well, luckily the Lasha Nigarath is going to be able to take a vast amount of them off the table and a vast amount of the Xehanort on the table. And the goal will be hopefully to kill the Master Xehanort in which the heart resides. So I feel like for the most part, do you have any other points that we need? Because I feel like for the most part, their arsenals both negate each other for the most part. It makes it so they can't kill you or you can't kill me. But in the end, I do believe Ainz to the goal of all life is death, and his multitude of instant teleportation spells, along with his access to his inventory, which allows him to drink mana potions and shit, it gives him the advantage that he needs to beat Xehanort. Are there any other points you want to go over that you want to bring up?
So I would argue, especially given that, you know, characters who are stated to have inferior time control to him can stop time, he definitely can, even if I can't find like a specific instance where he does. The unversed being stronger than him or stronger than himself would allow him to, you know, counter Ainz's summons, and the specific thing with the goal of all life is death. Isn't it mentioned that with the goal of all life is death, if you have, say, an ability or an item that would resurrect you, you can survive it?
Yes.
Because an interesting thing with Vanitas is that even after he died and his soul was destroyed, he was essentially revived by willing himself back into existence.
Right, but the thing about that is, the thing about the goal of all life is death, and Lasha Nigarath is that you would have to resist the actual like power of Shub Nigarath. This game is set in the real world where they have like websites and they are aware of real life lore, etc., and they do actually make multiple references to the direct book that Shub Nigarath is, and that is most specifically the Dark Young, where they have literally the exact same description. I can read it out to you if you want me to substantiate that claim.
And is Shub Nigarath, like, is that part of Ainz, or would that be considered like outside help if it has to like, if he has to like sacrifice things to it? If he has to like sacrifice things to it and then it chooses to, you know, help him, that sounds like outside help.
It's completely outside, I guess. Then I'd have to rely on simply him being able to use the long range term of it and the, excuse me. So it basically relies, then we're basically going to rely on the large scale use in the Dark Young, I guess. Or he can simply use another spell to do this if you want to completely take Lasha Nigarath off fucking the table. Let's see. What's the spell? 1 second. There is actually another form of a spell that he has that can completely stop resurrection to a certain tier. I'll get that for you. And I believe this spell is called True Undeath.
And what are some examples of like resurrection in that tier? How do they work?
Resurrection to a certain tier means like there's first there's spells that are able to resurrect you. Then there's there will be items, and then after that is like super tier spells, and then world items. And those are the 4 kind of forms of resurrection that we have currently. The other 2 being outside help from a super tier magic, or a fucking or a world item, which is when world items are like a tier above any world character, etc., because world items are able to work and eliminate the hacks of world level characters. So let me get True Undeath, or True Death rather, and it's a 9th tier spell which invalidates the effect of lower tier resurrection magic.
Yeah, well, which things count as lower tier resurrection and how do they function?
The only thing that I can think of that would be low tier resurrection with them to be the spells like revive and shit like that. And I would say that's them relying on their own power. But
And
that's
do
all
like
Go
do
ahead.
those like lower tier spells work if like someone's soul has been destroyed?
How do you mean?
I'm asking, like, if someone's soul is destroyed, could those lower tier spells resurrect them?
Yes, the lower tier spells could resurrect you. Like it's like rezzing a fucking character in what is it called? What's that game you play? League of Legends, World of Warcraft?
I don't play either of those, but I know what you mean.
Well, you know what I mean. Like they're dead, like their soul left their body, but they're brought back.
Well, yeah, I'm not talking like soul left your body. I'm talking soul destroyed,
It depends.
because that's what
I'd have to
happens
look at
to
I'd have to look at
Vanitas.
certain true death spells.
Because
Because
that's what
from-
happens to Vanitas at the end of his battle with Ventus, and he is able to essentially will himself back to life.
So essentially, right, the goal of all life is death is able to completely destroy like things beyond the concept of death, souls, like they're completely and utterly like wiped from existence. However, that's only Cry of the Banshee. So I would be incapable of saying for sure if all instant death attacks you could revive from the lower tier resurrection item, right? I wouldn't know if I don't have enough to support like the goal of all life is death plus this. Would the player be able to revive you from that? So I don't know. I'd have to say I don't know.
But yeah, something interesting with the good old Vanitas, that part of Xehanort, is that when he fights Ventus, the two are literally like, you could consider it fighting with like their spiritual bodies, I guess, because it's literally a battle like kind of within their soul,
Right.
and that's like where the battle is taking place. So, you know, throughout that fight, it's kind of at the end of that fight, the Keyblade, the real one, which was made by the fusing of their two souls, is destroyed.
Right.
And Ventus is completely destroyed, while Ventus nearly destroys his own soul in the process.
Right.
And then later, and I'll be able to pull it up in just 1 second, Vanitas is able to return through essentially willing himself back into existence.
So then
As-
my follow-up. Okay, go ahead. I mean,
Oh no, go ahead. It wasn't that important.
so my follow-up question would be like, so at that point, would Vanitas be able to revive the other Xehanorts, or at that point, is it now Vanitas versus Ainz?
Well, Vanitas, as you know, a Xehanort as of Kingdom Hearts 3, would have, as a vessel, he would have Xehanort's abilities. So it's still effectively just Xehanort versus Ainz, just with a different body.
Okay, so that's all from there. So now, I think we've conceded that we would get to this point in the fight. But I am going to tell you, I think there is a 50-hour cooldown on the goal of all life is death.
I
So
thought it was 100.
it might be 100, either 50 or 100. So basically, it now comes down to his other spell. So from now on, I won't just, if I do bring it back up again, I'm telling you up front, like, remind me I'm not able to bring that up because goal of all life is death is off the table if we're assuming that their battle doesn't go on for like days, which it possibly could, in which case, fuck yeah, but probably not though. So the next thing we have to go over is no more of the goal of all life to death. So now I have to use all his other abilities, and we're going back to Xehanort's other abilities, right? So in this case, is he still able to summon the infinite amount of monsters to fight his Dark Young, or is it Ainz's army of Dark Young versus just Xehanort?
He would still have that ability, as Vanitas is actually that initial. Xehanort
Okay.
only gained that ability once Vanitas became a Xehanort.
Okay. So then, is he able to revive himself instantly? And if so, how often? Or not how often? What would be the word? Like, does he have an unlimited amount of revives to the use of this, bringing himself back to his own will?
We have not seen a limit to it, and he essentially reformed in the Keyblade Graveyard immediately following his own death.
Okay.
Vanitas, one of the unbursts he is able to make, is also called the Mimic Master, which is able to create identical copies of his opponents.
And can you show me him doing this?
Yep.
Or not? Then I don't need to just show me the ability.
Loading. Yeah, this is a clone created by the Mimic Master, and it copies both the equipment and the abilities of the person that it was copied from. It's able to use the Keyblade arm, and able to use Terra or whoever you're playing as at the time. It's able to use whatever abilities you have equipped.
Wow. So it's only able to use the items that you have equipped currently.
Whatever you have on you. So essentially it's like in Birth by Sleep, you have your little, you can see it on the left, it's like the command deck. You can essentially put all your items in there, and it'll be able to copy any of those as well.
It also says that when he creates these copies, they have very little health. Right. Like they're stated to have very little health.
Well, sort of, but in gameplay, it actually amounts to them having the same health player, because the player in Kingdom Hearts just has far less health than everything else. So,
Okay,
it's really only low health, like relative to other bosses.
Okay, so I'm just gonna assume that. So as far as that goes, things able to think by themselves, or they uncontrol what's to do?
They're essentially just, they're able to fight, they're able to use the abilities of whoever they're copied effective. They'll just attack whatever the Mimic Monster wants, or the Mimic Master wants.
And he has complete control over these?
Yeah, the Unversed are quite literally just his emotions.
Okay. So my argument for that would simply be Ainz knows that he is has an incredibly poor defenses, and he would reach into his inventory to grab hold of anything that he needs. More specifically, I'm thinking the Perfect Warrior Touch Me's build in order to pretty easily solo all of these Ainz and their clones. So once the Ainz are taken care of, it's now going to be Touch Me's build, which I'm going to instantly move off of because we don't really know anything about it. We just know it's like God's here. But Touch Me's
Ainz,
go ahead.
If Ainz were, cloned, and so he decided to switch to his Touch Me build, would Ainz be able to defeat himself before the clone of himself could use the goal of all life is death?
Within 12 seconds.
Especially with the Unversed and Vanitas having the abilities to be able to just keep Ainz off of the other Ainz, and Ainz's already insane survivability.
Well, the thing on top of that, it's like the moment that he decides to use the goal of all life is death, Ainz is gonna know. Like, how many mimics does the Mimic Master create?
It's generally one to 3.
I think Ainz would be able to blitz all of his clones before, if they're said to have very little health. Then I would think that that Ainz would be able to blitz and kill each of these clones. As Ainz states that he's not even top tier. Meanwhile, a world champion is the top tier of each individual universe. So I do think Ainz would be able to blitz and defeat all 3 Ainzes, as even Ainz himself states he was never able to defeat Touch Me. Nor is Ainz considered even a top tier PvP player.
But with Ainz's whole kind of deathlessness thing, would his Touch Me build have anything capable of actually killing or even incapacitating the other Ainz, especially while he's still having to fight Vanitas himself and the other Unversed?
Well, from my understanding of it is, Ainz does not lose any of his abilities when he transforms into each individual set. It simply gives him the armor and the... if I remember correctly. Hold on, let me check. I don't want to speak out of my ass. But I do believe it simply gives him the armor and the weapons of whoever he's using it, and he uses Perfect Warrior to allow him to use all of these weapons. Hold on. Yeah, so it says nothing about his stats or anything being changed or any of his skills being restricted. And even if we were to assume it's still working the same way as Perfect Warrior, where he gives up most of his magic levels, which we have no evidence to go off of it as, he is still able to cast spells, as we see in the first episode. He's still able to cast fly.
He just doesn't have his spell buffing gear.
He doesn't have his spell buffing gear, right? So even if he decides to use the goal of all life is death, Ainz can simply teleport himself out of the way of the range of the attack through one of his greater teleportations, and then proceed to blitz him through the use of the Touch Me build.
If he were to use greater teleportation, wouldn't the other Ainz also just be able to use the same teleportation to prevent him from getting far enough away?
I don't think it's never been shown that he can dual cast spells. So if he's casting the goal of all life and death, he wouldn't be able to cast spells. In the same way that Ainz simply had to let himself get hit by Shaltir when he was casting the goal of all life and death. I'm not even sure if you can move all that much, to be honest, when you're using the goal of all life and death.
Well, Vanitas as a vessel of Xehanort would still have all of Xehanort's. Could still Zigbar's teleportation ability to teleport the other, the clone of Ainz.
Yeah, but then he'd still have to be able to locate Ainz, far away Ainz to go. I doubt Ainz would go 201 meters away from the explosion. And not only that, but Ainz actually does have multiple pieces of gear and rings on that prevent people from using divination magic or viewing him through scrying orbs.
Okay. So say, he avoids his clones. He avoids his clone spells. He still has to now contend with all of his own other spells while, the other self has his spell buffs. And if they're still fighting for long enough, eventually the Touch Me build could get copied as well.
Right.
Unless he focuses on the Mimic Master, which leaves him open to Vanitas and his clones, or he can try to focus on the clones, which leaves the Mimic Master open to making more.
Right, but don't forget that just because the Mimic Master is capable of that, the Mimic Master is a Heartless, correct?
It's an Unversed.
The Unversed is the
Unversed are the ones that
right?
specific. The Unversed are the ones that are specifically the extensions of Vanitas.
Okay, so they're still killable, right?
Kind of.
In the same vein that the Heartless are killable, they're able to be beat in submission, etc., etc. Like you can beat a Heartless with a wooden stick, and you can push them out, right? So are they in the same way that Heartless is killable, or would they need to have like their body, mind, and soul completely erased in the same way that a Xehanort would?
Well, they don't really have souls. They kind of. They don't really have souls, as they're essentially just kind of negative energy given shape.
Mm-hmm.
So it's more like, even if he could take out the Mimic Master as stated, even the weaker Unversed have been shown to be comparable to Vanitas himself, and the Mimic Master is one of the stronger ones. So even if he were able to kill it, even with his powered up, unarmed combat, he wouldn't be able to do it instantly, and once he did, Vanitas could simply make another one.
Okay. So then the next thing we have to discuss is how exactly we're gonna deal with this fucking Vanitas bitch. Okay. Does Vanitas himself have any resistance to the mind control and getting his mind attack, mind hacks specifically?
Let's see. In Dream Drop Distance, an enemy is revealed that are basically called the Dream Eaters.
Mm-hmm.
And the characters, sort of similarly to how their souls are capable of using their abilities to fight off soul-based attacks.
Right.
They're actually able to function very similarly to fight off the Dream Eaters, which essentially eat your mind.
And he resisted that.
Yeah, he is basically. It's basically like a standard in Kingdom Hearts for their souls to effectively be able to kind of move. It's sort of like the inside of their body is more or less like a pocket dimension that their soul kind of lives in, and it's kind of like they just kill foreign invaders type deal.
Right. So for things such as this, how long does it take for them to regenerate once the physical body has been destroyed?
Once the physical body has been destroyed, they don't have to regenerate. They're actually capable. Oh wait, you mean the Unversed?
Yeah, the Unversed and the Xehanort.
Yeah, with the Unversed, it's really just all Vanitas has to do is think about it and they will come back. When he's talking about it to Ventus, literally just like mid-sentence, he just spawns an army of them behind him casually. It's essentially as quickly as he wants. And Vanitas himself, as previously described, pretty much immediately showed back up in the Keyblade graveyard following his own death.
Okay, so my next question I feel like I want to go over is do these Vanitas and these Xehanorts have resistance to like high tier reality warping?
Reality warping of what nature?
Like his specific skill, Wish Upon a Star, is basically him using his experience to grant him a wish, which would be large scale things implemented by the developers themselves, which I would put at a, I don't even know where they are. Like the developers of the game themselves are granting the wish through the use of Wish Upon a Star, through the use of the 216 like commands of the that they programmed in. And I'll get you that spell right now.
What kind of things has he showcased with it? Because right now it just sounds really.
Well, the thing that he's able, it's stated that you can do things like change the magic. Well, not a change thing. I'd have to look. But the one thing that he does say he would be capable of doing is like directly stealing the abilities and talents of someone else. Like he can completely rewrite it so that person is incapable, no longer has the ability, and he himself has it. So my question would be like,
and you're saying when he
did something
uses
like
this ability, the wish is granted by the developers?
In the game, when it was like in-game mechanic, it was granted by the developers through the use of like programming that they did. However, I'm not sure to what he's wishing to when he uses it in the new world, but I would assume that it keeps the same level of power in the same way that his levels of power stayed consistent with like his spells and shit.
Because similar to the blah 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 from earlier, it sounds like this still might be outside help if some outside force is like granting his wish.
No, it's not granting. It's no longer him getting help from the developers because he's no longer in the game. Rather, it simply became a super tier magic, and it's not really explained what's granting the wish.
But is there still something granting the wish?
I wouldn't be able to say for sure. Nope. Actually, it says it's a super tier spell which consumes the user's points to grant the wish. So, even if that's not what they meant, I'm happy they worded it like that.
And it says, but the subject of world items. What counts as a world item?
World item with things like 5 elements overcoming, which is like requesting developers to directly change things in the game, which would be like the greater form of reality warping. You have World Savior, or the Wish Upon a Star is a spell, and world items are items. That would be the better way for me to describe that.
Well, no, because it says you know, it can make the impossible possible for everything but the subject of world items related. So it sounds like things like on the tier of world items it wouldn't be able to affect. So I'm asking quite how powerful those are.
It will for example, so one, you have the 5 elements overcoming, which I said is developers just completely changing the way magic works within their universe or within actually that multiverse. Then you have things like Longinus, which is existence erasure that cannot be restored even by the developers. So that's another outerversal thing, or I don't know if a developer for a video. Yeah, I think that would be because they're above all concepts. So not even like outerversal resurrection works. Like 5 elements overcoming is once again something outerversal as requesting someone infinitely above all the concepts of their universe to do something. So once again, like these, you also have Ouroboros, which is an even greater form of 5 elements overcoming, which they can change the entire game mechanism of all of Yggdrasil. World item can make it so you could solo all of Nazarick by yourself pretty easily. The downfall of castle and country completely removes all immunities from these 4D beings. Do you understand like the level of power? It's like vastly above the pay grade of even the top tier within Ainge's verse.
Yeah, so from the sounds of it, if it like needed the developers to be used in the first place, it sounds very unlike that just because, you know, it's no longer game mechanics, it's now like the world he lives in, you know? It still seems very unlikely that he's able to do it of his own power. It seems more like in this... Okay, clarify then?
Yeah, so what I confused 5 elements overcoming with granting, with the wish granting. It's 5 elements overcoming that request the developers to change the magic system, while the superstar one actually makes it so he's using his own experience points to get his wish granted by himself, I suppose.
Okay, so if that's what you're describing, where like, you know, the developers change things.
Yeah, no, that's the 5 elements overcoming. I got it.
Okay, so. Okay. 177. Do we know to like what extent he can like take people's abilities?
I would have to look at the ability that he was deal. Okay, so basically what he tried to steal was something called a talent. And a talent is like a form of magic akin to a martial art, wild magic, and witchcraft. A talent is something that you're born with, and its potency differs from person to person. Like there's Neferia, who was able to create potions that were not able to be made within the game, within Yggdrasil. Then there's Arshe, who has like these magic eyes and shit. And there's different people with different forms of abilities and potencies. However, when he's doing this, he's completely rewriting it. So he has the one. So he's the one with the talent, and the other person does not have it.
Yeah, from the sound of it, I don't think like, not even just Vanitas, but pretty much any Xehanort would really count as having a talent, because none of them were born with their abilities. Essentially, all Keyblade wielders start off as just like normal people, and it's not even... The only kind of like Keyblade chosen one is really Sora. All of the rest actually have to go through this like little ritual from another Keyblade wielder that allows them to use the Keyblade. So I don't think talents are really comparable to anything in Kingdom Hearts. Except
I wasn't saying he's the ability to steal talents. Like you asked me, what are some things that Wish Upon a Star was able to do, and I said he was able to steal something, like steal an innate ability from someone else. Like it was just me giving you an example of what kind of reality warping it can do, and the fact that it has the ability to reality warp.
Are there any more like specific examples with it?
I think
when reality warping is like really vague like that, it's hard to quantify how it could actually affect a fight.
I think he used it on Shaltir to do something about her being mind controlled by Downfall of Castle and Country, which is a world item. So I'd have to see if, for one, if I remember correctly at all, and for two, if it actually worked upon if it worked on Shaltir. But yeah, it does pretty much have the concept of giving him the ability to reality warp. And what I was asking was, I think that something like reality warping would allow him to be able to functionally either steal his ability through the use of using Shooting Star, or suppressing the ability by making him not capable of coming back from death should his mind and body be destroyed. Because at that point, go ahead.
And if he were to do that, is there nothing stopping the clones of himself from just doing the same thing, especially since they would have more uses of it due to there being multiple of them?
Yeah, they could do the same
to not only start taking away Ain's abilities, but make it so that if, Vanitas starts to lose his, they can just be granted back.
Right, but the thing about that is super tier magics are stated to have a very cast time, stated by Naomi Ainz by Sheltier. Ainz reaches into his inventory to take a cast up item called the Hourglass, which allows him to cast this spell instantly. So at that point, it really comes down to Ainz casting Death and then Astral Smite to kill not only Vanitas' physical body, but his actual soul.
And then he would have to, after doing that, use the Wish of whatchamacallit to prevent him from coming back.
Right.
In which
or he could do it, or he could leave with, and with. It doesn't really matter, I suppose. Unless you said, does Vanitas come back instantly?
Yeah, once he was killed, his self essentially reformed in the Keyblade graveyard immediately following his death.
Okay, so then he'd have to do it afterwards. Or actually, that doesn't make sense. He'd have to do it before.
And if he did it before, not only does, while he's charging it, does that leave him open to his clones and the Vanitas Remnant, the clones would know what it is since they share all of his abilities and could counter.
How do you think? His Wish Star is like instant cast Reality Warp.
Yeah, and they would have the same thing.
Because they have access to the very same pocket dimension that he has.
If it's in his inventory at the time, it would be in their inventory.
Okay, I gotcha. So then, yeah, okay.
That would include if he has those, like, class change items on him at the time, the clones would be able to use them as well.
Right, so, like, when you say on him, what do you mean? Because when he's grabbing these things, he goes into, like, a portal and pulls things out. But he's also been shown to have things on him physically, like in bags and in his robe stash. Like,
either one would still count, as the Mimic Masters are capable of forming Keyblades, even if at the time your character's is basically stashed away in their heart, which, as previously mentioned, is a pocket dimension.
Right, but the heart is physically a part of them in the same way that their hair is. I just say
yeah, but
it's within their heart.
The inside of their heart is still like a separate little pocket dimension.
And what's the access way to the pocket dimension?
Either just being a soul yourself to be able to enter it, or using something like a Keyblade that's capable of just like unlocking even like metaphorical locks to just be able to get into anything.
So then if they have the very same heart through the use of the Mimic Master and have the very same Keyblade, what stops them from being able to access the very same whatchamacallit? The very same like pocket dimension within the heart. It doesn't really sound like.
Well, yeah, that's what I'm saying. If the person has the ability to reach into these little pocket dimensions, then the clones would have the ability as well
to reach into the same pocket dimension.
Mm-hmm. Like if reaching into this pocket dimension is an ability he have, even if say like their inventories were linked or something, the clones would still be able to reach into those dimensions.
Okay, I gotcha. I gotta say, you got me this time. I concede.
Oof, GG.
I saw that coming after
that was actually really.
That was solid. Yeah, me got him. Ready.
Yeah, I was gonna say like, if I had to judge like what I was gonna say, I was just like, wow, Conte was like extremely confident. Someone who's so rhetorically notorious. Like, Aeroflame was very like unsure with his points.
He caught him staggering, didn't he?
Yeah, I even like DM Noodles. I was like, dude, like Aeroflame just like. He basically just blundered his queen with like saying that his own power up was like outside help, and then I don't know. It was just you just didn't seem like you're having your best day. So Godtongue would have
yeah.
anyway.
Yeah.
This was my best day. This was my best day. Godtongue is best.
Yeah, he did.
I mean,
for sure, he definitely.
Think of it this way, Aaron. We already talked about it earlier when we thought Spawn would beat Ainz. Godtongue beat me with Spawn. Like.
Yeah, so I guess Godtongue's the winner of the tournament.
Congratulations, Godtongue.
Yeah, GG.
Yeah.
Final score: Godtongue, Arrow, Noodles, Forbidden.
Yeah, so I'm curious on your perspective on this cocaine thing. Hold on. I did a little bit of research into it, and it turns out that cocaine used to be a stimulant that was used for morphine addiction. It'd be like a way to cope with it, per se. However, I also found that back in the day, when they did use it as a therapeutic drug, they also didn't realize that it was addictive whatsoever. So even those small therapeutic doses they were using normally turned out to be a massive hazard at the end of the day. So I feel like I'd predicate a discussion based off of that, the fact that we've already seen society try to use cocaine as a therapeutic stimulant before.
Because we didn't really see a big problem with cocaine until what, the 70s, 80s. Before then, it wasn't a problem.
Actually, it was outlawed around 1914.
I know, but I'm talking about and not really quote epidemic. Like in the 60s and 70s, it was quite popular to use as actually just as a standalone stimulant to keep you awake and going. But we didn't see that big of epidemic until you saw the 80s come through.
Are you saying the 80s as in? Hold on, sorry. Are you saying the 80s as in the 1880s or the 1980s?
1980s.
Well, then that's objectively wrong, because we know that there was problems when it was first discovered, on the most part, in like the 1800s.
Oh, I was referring to societal, not practical.
So let me look over here. Therapeutic use, because it has. Yes, so around 1860, let's see, 1880s, blah, blah, blah. Yep, so 1880s is when it was starting to be used on Civil War soldiers and stuff. Looking over here. 1884, it was used in value in, like, performing eye surgery because it stopped eyes from, like, bleeding, because it restricted the blood vessels in the eyes. I can give you the whole study for this if you want.
Okay, yeah, of course.
Around 1885, they started increasing production. Let me just read over this real quick. In 1887, the U.S. Surgeon General recommended that cocaine be used to treat depression, claiming that there was no such thing as cocaine addiction. And I'm going to give you the thing here now. Kind of go over from here. And then in one incident after another, cocaine's addictiveness and physical damage began to show up. People try to test with surgical procedures. Oh man, yeah. So in the mid-1800s, people quickly became non-functional addicts and not practice medicine. 1895, with abusing cocaine. It would be another 17 years before the danger of the drug is recognized sufficiently to make it a controlled substance. In 1914, the Harrison Narcotics Act rounded up the list. Basically, it was outlawed from there. So we've already seen.
When did you say the first use was, or when they kind of started? Because in one of the sources says it was actually in 1450s, 1460s.
Right. So we know it's been a while that it's been like around. However, we only know that it was starting to be produced more when it kind of reached the U.S. and people started finding medical uses for it, right? Before, it was more so kind of like an outlier narcotic or something that was like rare to find, or something not very common. But after, medicine began to promote cocaine, that's when it began to go into production a little bit more and started to get abused. I know that your argument is predicated on the belief that we're trying to justify why it can't be abused, right? It would be in controllable substance amounts.
Yeah, and it's just the could. Like, is there a possibility with modern medicine and other things? Could we use cocaine as an antidepressant?
Because what we've already, like I said before, it already was an antidepressant like 200 years ago. All I'm saying here is that even when used as medication, people became addicted to it. And to get a cocaine high at all, any whatsoever, you would have to take enough to stimulate your body. And I don't know if you know this or not, but you could become addicted to substances that you take occasionally, even.
Oh, of course.
You can become sexually addicted even, or anything that really fucks with the chemical, workup of your body can become addictive. So from there, I would just have to really, really hammer in the underlying issue, that is, cocaine would be a problem even if used moderately in terms of addictiveness.
Oh yeah, and again, this would just be something fun to talk about, because we know that the biggest problem with cocaine is even after just a small dosage, over even a week's use, the effects will wear off. The damage done to your serotonin, or not serotonin, but it is a serotonin.
Right.
Yeah, it'll be irreversible. It's already done its damage, and you won't be able to get the same reaction off the same dosage. You'd have to regularly increase dosage, and that kind of defeats the purpose of it being a small, moderated, controlled environment.
Right. Yeah.
Which is why I did my own research off of some peer-reviewed studies, and it's just the dosage you would get. Every day, essentially, you'd have to go up by a little bit, and even then, you'd have to use it multiple times a day. And the risk reward is just the risk is too high for the reward.
Right. Yeah. You were kind of going more about the morality of it, though. So.
Oh yeah, morality-wise, people should be able to use it. As a feel so.
So you believe that it is a negative right to be able to use drugs, because a negative right is basically you are not, forcing anybody or infringing on anybody else's rights, morality, or beliefs to take narcotics.
It's essentially any right that you can do upon yourself. If anything you can do upon yourself will be a positive right.
Then I would also try to hammer in from there. What about other people in society? I mean, obviously when you're a lone nomad, you can do whatever you want, right? Because you're not infringing anybody. If you have to eat animals as a lone nomad, there's no societal morals. Or if you have to kill people and eat them, you're not in a society. It's hard to argue it's objectively immoral just to do that on your own behalf, because obviously the only values that exist are what you perceive, right? That's the only objective level of value that you can understand in the universe. Because obviously nihilism is a very real thing unless you're in a society. So from there, it's like, no, you can't argue anything is immoral when you're arguing that, like, ontological nihilism. But when you're talking about something like societal drug usage, then it's a little bit different, because you could argue very well that people having the negative right to use drugs would eventually hinder other people's rights to a better society. So, like, when we structure society, the definition of social contract is to build a contract that benefits society. So there's an objective moral framework with society that we need to build to let people, prosper and progress in a beneficial way. And if eventually people are becoming drug addicts, society may suffer from that usage, which is why in the real world we wouldn't legalize those things, despite people seeing things like that as freedoms, right?
Okay. Oh yeah. The only issue is, so you're coming from the point of society would take a step back if people were allowed to freely use drugs as they saw fit, right? That'd be a standpoint, right?
I would say that it would hold society back, so it would be against society's objective morality, at least in terms of definitions, and it may very well infringe on other people's negative rights too, because when you have drug addicts, they become become different people. I mean, I don't know how many drug addicts you've met in your life, but they become very, very different people. They will do certain things for drugs, and they will degrade as a person completely, and it will affect other people in the long run.
Of course, the issue is with more I don't think it would hold society back, and we've seen this when drugs were completely legal. You saw this in between the 1850s and 1920s, Industrial Revolution in the United States. You had the largest jump in quality of life the world has ever seen in just those 70 short years. And that's nothing you can argue. You can't debate against that. That is a priori. You can't debate against that. I don't need to, that's common knowledge at this point. And throughout those years, drugs were completely legal. So there wasn't a single illegal drug during the Industrial Revolution.
So
until the end, which is with the 1915, 1913, you had marijuana and stuff started becoming illegal, in and out of legality.
Let me ask you something. What was the year you said these drugs were legal? What years again? 1920 through 1950 is what?
Oh no! Cocaine. Cocaine became legal in 1914. Opiates saw it.
No, it became illegal.
Yeah, that's what I'm saying. Illegal.
Yeah.
I'm eating. Sorry.
It's fine.
It became illegal in that area. I know opiates became illegal. Well, they started pushing for it in the 1890s because Congress, the first congressional act, actually was on morphine and opium. In 1890, it was actually a tax thing, kind of like how we do with cigarettes. It actually imposed taxes on morphine and opium. But based on what the National Alliance of Advocates of something says, I can't read the words. Essentially, around 1905, 1906, you started seeing a lot of stuff becoming a little Pure Food Drug Act, Smoking Opium Exclusion Act, Harrison Act. Supreme Court ratified the Harrison Anti-Narcotic Act. Then all of a sudden, throughout the entire 20s, you had the Heroin Act, Narcotic Drug Import and Export Act. It really just went straight downhill from there. But there isn't. When you were saying that people that are addicted to drugs can become a menace to society. You could argue the same thing about cigarettes and alcohol. With cigarettes, you have exponentially higher amount of cancer, and with that, you have increased medical costs, just out the roof, increased medical costs for everyone else in society. So you have to then take the position of making anything that's a menace to society to a certain extent illegal. You could argue driving cars has caused insurance overall just to jump up thousands of percent every, over the last 50 years. You'd have to then also argue that drinking alcohol has caused things like liver and kidney cancer, disease, all that, which has caused, again, prices of medical care to go up exponentially, way worse than anything like smoking pot or anything would do. And also, to say that it's against society standards, that's also false, because I can pull up hundreds of polls from all over the world. Most adults recreationally use drugs. That's a fact.
So let's break down a few things you said here. So I'd like to go over your alcohol argument. Alcohol is objectively immoral for the most part. Like the amount of people that die and suffer from using alcohol is pretty detrimental. The only reason that it's even still really around is because it's so profitable, right? Without alcohol, the country's economics would go down, finances go down, and obviously people, when it was made illegal, it was kind of turned into a big deal. You remember that, the whole alcohol runs,
Prohibition Act, and then the government started poisoning people's alcohol and killing them in mass.
Yeah, so there's a big reason why alcohol is so dangerous, but it's still around. It's because the stigma of legalizing something like that is really bad. And I would argue that marijuana is far more ethical to keep in society because it has so many more benefits and so many good things about it. especially for people that have problems with their appetite or chronic pain or even some forms of depression. Whereas alcohol is a depressant, probably causes a lot of suicides, drunk driving, accidents, and driving is obviously a big deal. Now, the thing about driving is that driving has a lot of problems, but it has a lot of benefits as well. I don't even really need to do any research on this. You can just use common sense for this one. Yeah, it's just like, obviously people get to work using cars. People transport things using cars. Cars need to happen, so that's just kind of like a cost of being alive and being successful, really.
Necessity, right?
Yeah, that's just a cost of being. Whereas drugs aren't really a necessity, right? I mean, you might be able to argue things like marijuana or something might be necessary for some people, but
you could also argue that driving cars is a necessity. It's no longer a necessity.
For the most part, it can be. I mean, like,
overall,
give me an example of when a car isn't a necessity.
No. The act of driving it itself, like me getting in the car and me driving the car, is not a necessity at all.
Oh well, no. I don't mean that. I mean like to live your life to a standard of in society.
Oh yeah, of course. In our country, because our country is so large, and there's actually unlike places like in Europe, China, we actually have a lot of land in between our cities. So cars are, if anything, even in the United States, the poorest people have working cars, personal cars. You could argue that a car in the United States is a necessity for the most part, outside of extremely urbanized areas and large metropolitan cities.
Right. So now we have to go over some other things you said. Now that we had that discussion, I'm a little bit rusty on what else you said here. You said something about things like...
I was just going over some of the things like in the spur of like 1905 is when you really, or 1906, Pure Food and Drug Act, you started seeing a large push for, at least from the government standpoint, of drugs and stuff becoming illegal, like the Opium Exclusion Act. It banned essentially smoking and possessing smoking opium versus medication-based like morphine and injectable. Right. But that was really the first recreational bust on drugs in the United States, would be that smoking opium exclusion act.
Yeah, from what I remember earlier, I'm trying to go back to what you said for the exact year. You said something about 1920 through 1950 being like a very great year for positivity, like in the Industrial Revolution.
No, 1850 to 1920.
Okay, that's 1850 to 1920.
Yeah, that was the Industrial Revolution in the United States.
Okay, well, let's go a few reasons why drugs aren't inherently connected to that. I mean, for one, drugs didn't even become manufactured until they became a medical stimuli, which is around 1880-ish. You might need
that's false.
You might need to quote me on that.
Yeah, because the market from China to the United States with opium was astronomical in size. It was actually its own sizable market in the United States in the 1880s and 90s.
Wasn't that done? Well, 1880s, right? Yeah, 1880s.
Yeah.
I said 1880s.
No, but opium isn't a necessarily medically processed drug, and again, you actually had more people recreationally using opiates than you do people using it medically, which would be the opposite of other drugs that became illegal.
Right, but what I was saying was that it was becoming to be used as a medical stimulant, and it was starting to gain traction and popularity. So when it became shipped over, it would only become even more popular from other states and countries, and obviously, doctors started to say, hey, it treats problems, blah, blah, blah. And then obviously the Surgeon General was like, nope, it's not addictive. There's no such thing as cocaine addiction. And then, literally that same year or a little bit later, they're like, oh, whoops, that was a bad idea. And they didn't really get it banned until 20 years later. But the Industrial Revolution started way, way before that. And the well-being of the people had nothing to do with drug use that quickly became apparent that it was abusive and addictive. What really helped society was the actual Industrial Revolution, which was economy started booming and obviously technology started booming. That's what increased well-being. I don't know why drugs are involved in that calculation there. But
the drugs being inherently illegal didn't hinder that.
I'm not.
Well, and again, opiates. Well, the problem is, opiates actually were a big deal even in the United States as it became independent. Like if they didn't become popular in 1880. They were popular in you had heroin in a bottle. Like what year was this? Like 1820. You had noscapine, strychnine, veritine, colchicine, caffeine, quinine. You had morphine in 1827, and this is all in the United States.
Right. So what I would
codeine in 1942, like this stuff was way before the Industrial Revolution, 20, 30, 40 years before the Industrial Revolution really took off, and even before the Civil War.
So what I would say to you from here is all the people that would forward society or any of these societal advances have nothing to do with drug use, right? You would agree with you would agree that
those people, most of those people, like all the generals, all the politicians, were all drug users of some sort.
Here's why I'm saying that is because anybody that was actually using these stimulants on average would succumb to addictions. So we're talking about cocaine in general. I don't know about all opiates, but cocaine in general. The main person who started using cocaine seriously started to break down psychologically, and that's one of the biggest reasons it became outlawed. Like it was like a doctor, and then eventually we learned that doctors couldn't do any medical practices anymore because they become addicts. So all I'm saying from here is that it does hold back members of society, right? And as we said before, I'm not saying that it's going to completely hold back society. Not everyone is a complete drug abuser, or not everyone's going to make inventions while on some like acid high or something. All I'm saying is that it objectively hinders members of society who would overall be far more beneficial, and these members of society can be extremely abusive to other members of society, especially when they get desperate, right? Do you know anything about drug addicted like homeless people, or should I go into detail? I mean, like,
sure, but you could also argue that it being illegal, and with the black market being such high in power because of it being illegal, that's actually a larger cause, and the fact that we treat them as criminals and not a health issue also severely hurts these people. If you treated it like other countries do and treat it as a health issue, like in Portugal, drugs, I don't know if it's Spain as well, but I know at least Portugal, all drugs are 100% legal, and you actually saw a substantial drop in drug use after everything became 100% legal. And there's no issues with society being brought down because of this either. Their GDP hasn't tanked. There's no mass unemployment, no mass, people not working or anything. But there's not been an enormous detriment to society. You actually see drug use go down.
The problem with our country, though, is that it's much different. We see people abusing drugs that are legal in America, even now. Whereas in other countries, there are different stigmas and there are different cultures, right? Now, you can't really make the connection that all countries are exactly the same in all cultures and all means of walk of life, because if our country did have legal drugs, things would be extremely bad. I mean, even before heroin was considered legal or not, people were still abusing it, blah, blah, blah. Now, it's really hard to abuse heroin, but it's still just an idea. If people want something, they're going to abuse it. And people, even now, while heroin and cocaine and all these things are illegal, they're already abusing it. If it was legal, it would only be worse. It'd probably be worse than alcohol. Because just because alcohol is legal doesn't mean it's not one of the most #1 killers in our country today. Would you agree that alcohol is probably one of the most #1 killers?
Behind cancer and heart disease, it would be.
Well, those are like natural, self-occurring things.
Heart disease and cancer, no, these are things caused by dietary and environmental stuff.
Well, no, cancer. We can't really pinpoint cancer because cancer
is genetic, but
cancer has so many different factors. That's such a vague.
Cancer is a genetic illness. Like everyone has the potential to get cancer. Yeah. It's environmental factors that trigger it.
Yeah, there's so many different things that cause cancer. And obviously with heart disease is obviously on that cancer level too, because everyone can really get heart disease.
Yeah, but again, that's mainly due to environmental. If anything, you could argue heart disease is almost purely based on diet. Some of it is hereditary, but again, your diet is what sparks it. But your diet sparks it.
You could argue it's on diet, but you could also argue it's a few other things. Like I said before, though, alcohol is one of the most abused drugs, and obviously car crashes.
Yeah, caffeine as well.
Drunk car crashes and stuff like that are terrible. And if heroin, well, I should stop saying heroin because it's about cocaine. If cocaine was legal, it would be abused. Absolutely, because that's how we as a society work already. We work in this weird party YOLO culture that likes to just abuse things even when they're illegal. So I do not see the argument that because Portugal doesn't do it, that our society would inherently be different. Especially because our society is so different and mixed compared to a lot of different other countries. You could also see, what's a good example of a country addicted to cocaine? Like places like the UK, and it's not even really legal there. So there's definitely no reason it should be.
Yeah, okay. I wasn't really using Portugal as a defense. I was using it as an example only. Saying that there's a possibility. But do you think, personal, not debate-wise, do you believe that if heroin was made legal tomorrow, that everyone would be on the street shooting heroin?
I feel like people would try it, and I feel like there'd be a good group of people that would try it, and I feel like there's a good group of those people that do try it would become addicted to it, if that's what you think. Because I think if anything comes out like, wow, guys, heroin is actually so okay that it's not even illegal, people will be far more willing to try it.
I think the contrary, and only if it's, and essentially what Portugal does is it treats it as a health issue.
Right.
Instead of like jailing these people up, essentially for just making personal choices, they have them see psychiatrists and health practitioners and stuff, and they try and get them help.
Well, that's a different argument. Yeah. I don't think people should be jailed. I think they should be forcibly rehabbed.
I'm 100% against any type of initiation of force. And again, obviously, hurting people already is illegal. You can't just go up to people and rob them or, rape them or attack them. And if you do it under the influence of drugs, it doesn't make it any different. It's still illegal regardless.
Well, of course,
they're just using it as an excuse to take away more personal freedom.
All acts of violence are bad, right? That's totally yeah.
Not in self-defense.
Not in self-defense, obviously, but all acts,
acts of initiating
in your
violence.
Case, right. There should be a no aggression principle, right? But drugs push that ideology. I myself have lived around a lot of drug addicts in my life. Never have done them, thank God. But,
me neither.
But
I've drank, but I don't like drink at home. I'll drink in public. Like if I'm going with friends. Other than that, I don't really. Yeah. That's not for me.
Yeah, but I've known a ton of drug addicts, and they do become extremely violent. So I had this one friend who mixed whiskey with heroin. The most stupid thing you could probably do.
Well, I've seen people take salvia or smoke salvia,
and ended up stabbing our neighbor 18 times. And is in jail to this day. And I do have to say that it does put people to threat if they are allowed to use these things recreationally, because it just changes how you are completely. However, I want to talk more about the rehabilitation thing. You don't believe people should be forced into rehab if they are abusing drugs?
Absolutely not. If anything, it should be their choice, because drugs are so illegal and there's such a big stigma when it comes to police. If drugs were legal, you would have, I believe, an exponential increase to people going to rehab or approaching for help. Because if you go to rehab, they can still arrest you for drug abuse. That's a huge problem, and I think that's a good argument against why you don't see as many people in rehab, is because people are scared of getting attacked or the humiliation. Whereas if it was legal, it wouldn't. Again, like you said, it wouldn't be as big a stigma. Right. So arguably more people would go for help.
Well, what I'm saying here is, imagine we're in a world, right, where cocaine and all these drugs. Let's just stop using the word cocaine. Just drugs, okay? Yeah, drugs. Let's just say that drugs are legal, right? People acknowledge drugs as a negative right in this vacuum, right? Or this society. Now it comes down to, if you have somebody who is completely unable to control their actions due to drugs, right? They are basically not even the same person anymore. And they are becoming somewhat of a threat to society due to their drug use. And they are unwilling to seek help because of how addicted to drugs they are. I find at that point, it is not only... it's better for that person, but it is also better for everyone else around them in society for that person to be rehabilitated. So I do have to think that there has to be some limit to how addicted and fucked off on drugs you can become, to the point where there might need to be forced rehabilitation. Now, I'm not...
I think you and I see a similar in this issue. If you are a menace to society based on your drugs, essentially, in the terms that you are causing harm to other people, I think that you have forfeited your right to use drugs. That is a forfeit. If you are a danger to society, in the terms that you are initiating violence or threatening people,
right,
you have forfeited your right to use drugs.
I agree.
You had forfeited those rights. So it would be taken care of, if anything, faster than the way we take care of it currently. And I think it would be even better than making it illegal, because even if you make it illegal, I could go down the street and buy an eighth right now, no problem.
Right.
It's not going to help anything. If anything, it makes it more dangerous, because drugs are more dangerous. Sorry.
Yeah, you cut out.
I'm eating for a second.
Yeah.
Drugs are more dangerous because there's no competition. There's no legal competition. So prices are going to stay where they are. Quality is going to go down. Danger is going to go up. The danger in upon itself being threatened by people with guns is going to go up, because, again, police shootouts and stuff. Cartels, fight clubs. If it was 100% legal, you wouldn't have to worry about any of this stuff. They would have no power over this. You'd have more medical practices being put into it to say, hey, this probably shouldn't be good, this wouldn't be bad. There'd be more public information on it than you think, oh, let me go try some cocaine. It'd be more along the lines of, we know how really dangerous this is, because look at all these campaigns, X, Y, and Z, it says it's bad, I trust these people, therefore it's probably bad. And I think you would see an overall better society if everything was legalized like that. And I think you would see society take more responsibility of itself, in my opinion.
So, I do understand a little bit regarding this, gang and cartel argument. I do think that my previous arguments are still relevant. We kind of got off track due to the rehabilitation segment there. But my previous stance...
I wouldn't call it off track. We're making our rounds. This is discussion.
Yeah. Well, yeah, rehabilitation is more like, it's more like a substrate or something. But the previous, discussion we had was, it by default, it will become progressively more and more addictive, unless you have an extremely small amount, once a year or something, because even doing drugs once will by default kind of restructure the way your brain works a little bit, because it just fucks with your chemicals so extremely that it's really hard to go back to normal after it. And I know this is somewhat anecdotal, but a lot of people will also kind of pay testimony.
It's scientific.
Yeah, a lot of people pay testimony to that. It does change you as a person even after using it one time. So I do find that just extremely outlawing it is obviously the most moral choice. However, so basically what I'm saying here is, if we lived in a vacuum where there was, no such thing as cartels, or everyone just followed the law, then it would be far more moral to outlaw drugs. But people don't follow the law, as you just said, and that leads to cartels and stuff. However, what we have now is more of a society that we have today, right? So what you're arguing now is that this society and this vacuum you're creating is going to be more beneficial than the society we have today. And obviously we're going to have to agree to disagree there, because I think that people would become far more addicted due to our culture. There's already some fucked off bums all the time that are becoming far, far worse as time goes on. And it's not going to get any better if you legalize this stuff either and make it cheaper and more easily accessible. If anything, it would increase the number of these people. And I firmly just have to disagree with that statement. But I do see where you're coming from.
But in all honesty, even people under the age of 16, a majority of people under the age of 16 have already tried drugs. So even with them being illegal, if someone that young can have access to them, I don't see the argument to where making them illegal is gonna really solve anything, just based on that.
So the question here isn't that everyone is going to become a drug addict if they try it one time. The argument is mainly so that it is far more detrimental to these individuals to even be able to test it than it is to just not allow it to exist. So it's like, here's a good argument for you. This is a little bit kind of like an anti-natalism argument. So the lack of suffering is good, and the lack of pleasure is neutral. Would you agree with that?
The lack of suffering being good, right?
The lack of suffering is good, but the lack of pleasure is neutral.
I would say yes to the first one, but the second one I think is you could argue other.
Well, there's other ways to get pleasure.
No, but you're saying lack of pleasure in all. I think the lack of pleasure in all is negative.
Right, if there's no pleasure at all, but that's only with antinatalism. I said I was kind of basing around antinatalism, but
well, we all know I'm retarded. So.
yeah, but I wasn't saying it was antinatalism. So this is the argument that not having something that brings you pleasure, just one thing. There's still everything else in life that can bring you pleasure, but this one thing that brings you pleasure, it doesn't exist. You never needed it because you never tried it, so you don't need it. You might need it like medically, like marijuana or something, but not like cocaine or something. Okay, we've already explained that. So the lack of this pleasure is neutral, and the lack of this suffering that this drug could bring you is good inherently. So therefore, I would argue that the subtraction of this drug's existence is by definition the axiom that I'm establishing would be the most morally good.
Okay.
Yeah.
Do you believe, let me ask you a philosophical question. Do you believe that a person's highest end is in themselves?
I do believe that the only objective value in the universe is what you yourself can perceive. But as I've said earlier, this is about members. This is more about an individual in society, not necessarily an individual as a nomad.
Oh no, I understand, but I'm saying if you believe, like we agree, that your highest moral end is yourself.
Okay.
And if that's true, do you not have to respect other people's highest moral ends by default?
There's a few problems with that, because obviously if people respect their own highest ends over, over everything else, there could be a few problems with that. I could say that you could use it to justify pretty much anything, so long as it doesn't hurt other people, like directly. You can do actions that can indirectly affect other people.
That'd still be